I'm joined by our chief reporter, Kaveh Solhekol. Thanks for being with us, along with author Chris Blackhurst, who has written a book on the Glazers and Manchester United. It's called The World's Biggest Cash Machine. Kaveh, big developments. Tell us what it really all means.
Well, look, that statement from Manchester United talked about continuity and stability. But of course, there's been very little stability at United for a long time. The club has been in limbo for at least 12 months, while the Glazers have been trying to decide whether to sell the club or whether to just sell a minority stake in the club. And we know that in the next few days it's going to be announced that Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos have bought a minority stake in the club, and apparently that is going to give them a lot of influence over the football operations at Old Trafford. And I think Richard Arnold is going to be the first of quite a lot of high-profile people who are going to be leaving the club. And to be honest, he's had one of the hardest jobs in football. It is not easy running Manchester United at the moment. It is not easy working for the Glazers. He's had a pretty torrid time for 18 months. He's been at United for a long time. His background is in the commercial department. I think he was much more comfortable in that environment. So I think he'll be the first of quite a few changes that we will see over the next few days. I think whoever had bought the club, it was likely that people like Richard Arnold would probably be leaving.
Yeah, so the interim solution is Patrick Stewart, who's already on the inside. So they're looking to, just keep things ticking over until we learn more?
I think, it's significant that he's been called interim. That means he's probably not going to be around for very long. If Jim Ratcliffe gets the kind of influence that we believe he is going to get, he will be able to maybe influence who is going to take that job on a full-time basis. There's been lots of talk that it could be somebody who already works for Ineos Sport, Jean-Claude Blanc, who used to have senior executive roles at clubs like Juventus and PSG as well. But looking at it from the outside, this still looks like an almighty mess, because we're going to have a situation where somebody who only owns 25% of the club is apparently going to be calling the shots. And there is going to be a new football operations board. Dave Brailsford, somebody who's got a lot of experience in cycling, is apparently now going to be somebody who's also going to be calling the shots at Old Trafford. I think, it's going to be a fantastic story for journalists. It's going to be a fantastic story for Chris to maybe write a sequel to his excellent book. But if you're a Manchester United supporter, this is not the brave new world that you wanted. You're not going to be seeing the back of the Glazers. It is more uncertainty, it is more turmoil, and it's more of the Glazers ultimately owning Manchester United.
Well, Kaveh, you've given Chris Blackhurst such a wonderful sell. I have to bring you in at that point, Chris.
Fantastic, thank you.
Just on that point that Kaveh makes, Jim Ratcliffe, we understand, he's taking 25% and he wants to run the whole show, specifically the football side of things. How's that going to work in practice?
Well, look, it's a very good question. I mean, it's very simple. If they're going for a player that's costing £100 million, £75 million of that is Glazer money, 25 million is Ratcliffe money. How does that work? Now, it may be that the Glazers concede that the football side they have let languish and they've not done enough with it. They don't know enough about football. Well, my worry there slightly, and I'm not anti-Jim Ratcliffe, but there's not much in Jim Ratcliffe's record that says that he does either. Nice are not exactly the runaway success in France. He owns Lausanne. Dave Brailsford is a brilliant manager of a cycling team. Well, cycling is not the same as football. So how it is going to play out, I do not know. And for the fans, the biggest problem is that the Glazers still have 3/4 of the club.
Yeah, and when we talk about people that own football clubs, these are enormously valuable commodities. They're billionaires. How is it ever going to work when a billionaire, at either side of the coin, whether it's Ratcliffe or whether it's the Glazer family, ultimately have to be backseat drivers?
Well, it's not, because it's their money, and this is all about money. And if you're putting in a fortune, or you're sitting on an asset that is worth a fortune, and it is, you're going to make very sure that it's protected. And what the Glazers have done all along is that they've built up the commercial side. The commercial side of Manchester United is an absolute powerhouse. It's incredible. If only that had been replicated on the pitch, then everyone would have been happy. But it's not been like that. But it's all about money, I'm afraid.
Kaveh, we talked about it earlier, myself and Chris, off air. The change at the top with Richard Arnold, in effect, leaving the club in the next 6 weeks' time. Does that signify that the investment from Jim Ratcliffe is now imminent?
I think we're going to get an announcement pretty soon. We've been talking over the last couple of weeks about the fact that United like to choreograph these announcements so it doesn't affect the first team. We're in the middle of an international break at the moment. We never normally get announcements on the day of a game or a day before a game or a day after the game. I think Erik ten Hag is very territorial when it comes to issues like that. So I think we will get an announcement shortly. I think what's interesting, if we're going to talk about Erik ten Hag as well, is what does this mean for Erik ten Hag? Now, we were reporting a few months ago that our understanding was that as far as Erik ten Hag was concerned, he would prefer it if the Qataris bought Manchester United. He would prefer it if somebody new owned 100% of the club and somebody who had unlimited funds to be able to back him would be in charge of the club. Obviously, that hasn't happened. I think in the short term, there are no immediate plans to replace Erik ten Hag, but he himself knows that the period between now and January, when the window opens, is absolutely crucial for him as far as results are concerned.
Yeah, I mean, I'd make a point there as well, which is that I don't think we know what Jim Ratcliffe thinks of Erik ten Hag, and it's that classic thing. Erik ten Hag is not Jim Ratcliffe's choice of manager. He was the
Just
Glazers.
as Russell Arnold wasn't his choice as chief executive.
He was the Glazers' choice. So I know that if I was Erik ten Hag, God forbid, if I was Erik ten Hag, I'd be feeling a bit awkward right now. I wouldn't be too sure who they want, where they want the club to go, and it is a huge time of uncertainty.
I said Russell Arnold, he's a cricketer, Richard Arnold.
We saw the situation as well with Chelsea as well. Takeover there. Thomas Tuchel was the manager. He'd been very successful. He'd won the Champions League. They became club world champions. Just a few months later, the new American owners decided to replace him with Graham Potter. And virtually everybody who was in a senior position at Chelsea has been replaced. This is what happens when we have takeovers. Of course, this one is a little bit different because the person coming in is only going to be buying 25% of the club.